All right. I think we got it this time. Welcome, everyone, to a new ANARK live stream, especially those of you who are watching on the video on demand. I'm sure that is almost the only people who are seeing the video this early. I appreciate everybody who watches afterwards, as well as the people who show up on time. I know that not everybody can make it at the time that I schedule the live streams, but welcome to those of you who are here. Give me just a moment. I'm getting everything all set up. I'm pretty sure I got this set up correctly. Last time I did something really weird there just a second ago. Let's see the other one. I'm just going to delete the previous attempt. There we go. Welcome anybody who's shown up so far. Doesn't look like we've got any viewers so far. Not sure why this is happening here. Gonna link this to people. All right, sharing it around. All right, there we go. Got people finally showing up here. It's weird. It's not showing any activity in my dashboard. This is very odd. Welcome to everybody, however. Glad to see you here. Damn, we got people. We got people. Dashboard just doesn't say I have anybody in here. There we go. Nice. Off to a good start, it appears. I think I got my lighting set up pretty good. Got that crispy detail. Yeah, I've got it to where my actual filming camera is the camera I use as like my webcam. So hopefully it looks pretty. Probably stick around here for 2, maybe 3 hours maximum, and then I will be heading out. But I guess the first news is I am changing my streaming schedule. You're kind of seeing the results of it right now. I'm going to start streaming 2 times a month. Or some months, every once in a while, it will be 3 times a month. But it is essentially now every other Friday. So not just last Friday of the month, but every other Friday. So most months that'll just be 2 Fridays, but every great once in a while that will fall such that there will be 3 Fridays in a month that I will be streaming. But yeah, that's just kind of to keep people engaged. I've got all these projects on my plate and they're going to take a long time. And I just want to make sure that I'm still like making contact with y'all and y'all still know that I'm working on the channel and things are still happening. I don't want you to think that like, you know, I've stopped working on the channel behind the scenes. I also want to note that there's going to be a new video dropping here in about 20 minutes. So kind of weird timing. Generally, I try not to release videos on the days that I'm live streaming, but it just so this one had been delayed for so long. It was I went to New York City. I was flown out to New York City to speak at Woodbine, which is I guess you would say a prefigurative or a dual power space. It is an event space in New York City, and it is in Manhattan now. It's actually in the same space that Josh Cittarella's Doom Scroll podcast is filmed. So I went there. I gave like a 15-minute talk about Cooperation Tulsa and how the theory in a modern anarchism applies to Cooperation Tulsa, trying to kind of give people a framework for the rest of the 4-day conference. And if that interests you, you should go over to or you should, in 20 minutes, you should go over and just look at the video releases on the channel, and you'll see the speech that I gave there at Woodbine. Woodbine was super cool. Y'all should look into it as much as you can. All right. So yeah, we are now going to be doing 2 Fridays a month. And, oh yeah, another piece of news, A Modern Anarchism has a release date. It is going to be releasing October 27th. So for all of you who are entertained by my material, who are inspired by my material has motivated you to act in the world, it's given you a better understanding of the world. Please go over and pre-order a copy of my book. Like, this is very much like the culmination of all of the work that I've done on this channel is finally getting one of these big video essay series published as a book. And I intend to continue doing this. I intend to keep publishing books. I intend to keep writing video essays, which are then of the quality that they could be published as books, that they could be published as like papers in journals, or that they could be like a graduate level thesis or something like that. So that's continues to be my focus on the channel. And if you want to support me doing like this high level work, if you want to support me doing work which has a lot of rigor and academic value, then I highly recommend you go over and pre-order A Modern Anarchism, because that will give PM Press the understanding that this book has a fan base, that my work has a group of people who want to consume it, that I am connected with people on the ground, and all of those things. And it will help me get published in the future. So yeah, go over and pre-order A Modern Anarchism. Any video reacts for the stream? I don't generally do video reactions on the stream. It's not to say that that's like completely off limits for me, but it's something that I consider kind of low quality content in a general sense. It's kind of like low hanging fruit, and it's something that I've tried to avoid doing on the channel, because I think that it's a perverse incentive of being a YouTuber. So it's not to say that I'm like against it in totality. I would probably do it in like a limited sense, but I definitely don't want to make it a normal part of my live streams or my channel presence. That being said, I every once in a while will do reactions where I make videos more broadly kind of reacting to things. I've definitely done like quote unquote ANARK responds videos. Those are already up on the channel, and I definitely plan on still doing few. I've written like a script for a react or a response video, but no, in general, I don't really do like video reacts and stuff on stream. Yeah, appreciate y'all being here. Already got 32 viewers. Not bad to start. How's everybody doing today? I appreciate you, Rotten Mouse. Rotten Mouse says, gonna pre-order tonight. You and Zoe Baker have been so influential in my political development. I owe y'all a debt, really. We'll be very happy to add it to my collection. That's fantastic. Super glad to hear it. Yeah, Zoe Baker does great work. I highly recommend y'all go buy Means and Ends by Zoe Baker as well. Smitty BLT says, yo, finally able to make it to the start of a stream. Glad to have you here. Black Anarchist says, sup, y'all. Glad to see you here. Definitely see the familiar faces showing up. Yeah, you know, it's so funny that the videos where I just take like clips from the streams and I post them, those videos often do better than the videos that I put like weeks of effort into. It's kind of sad. I mean, it really demonstrates the level of content that prevails on YouTube. And it's disappointing because the level of content I want to do, I want to be able to just like work on video essays for months and then release something like super high quality for y'all. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like that stuff does nearly as well as like kind of like content which is like, you know, low quality but topical. Like topical low quality content seems to do quite a bit better than content which is like takes a long time to develop and think through with like robust citations. That stuff never seems to do as well on my channel, unfortunately. No messages from non-members. I don't know what you're talking about. It should be set to no messages from non-subscribers. So you should just have to be a subscriber in order to talk here. I mean, there's a ton of people in chat here who are not members who are talking. Kuroilnu, we'll say. You said, I think last stream you were talking about Andrew leaning more into mutualism. Can you elaborate more on your concerns with mutualism? Mutualism has become a pretty diverse tendency at this point. Like you've got the classical Proudhonist mutualists, but you've also got like more modern mutualists that see things a little bit different from Proudhon. That being said, my concerns with mutualism is that it is, I don't know, I suppose its maximal program is like my minimal program, you might say. Like it seems to be just focusing on the establishment of like a state bank that gives out interest-free loans to workers' cooperatives. It has a strong focus on just workers' cooperatives. Like that's a big thing that it focuses on. And it doesn't seem to have like, a broader organizational program. It seems to have a dislike of organizationalism. And I think that is just not going to work. I mean, I guess to put it simply, the attempt to fight for a state bank that gives out interest-free loans, that's fine. That's Proudhon. I can't say, I haven't watched Andrew's newest video, so I can't say if that has, I doubt that's what he's talking about in that video that people are saying is mutualist. You know, just this over focus on workers' cooperatives. I'm somebody who has a focus on workers' cooperatives. I think worker self-directed enterprises are very, very important and that they're going to be a very important part of a revolutionary transition. I just don't think that we should have an over-focus on them. And once again, I'll preface, I haven't watched the Andrew video people are referring to here, so I don't know what Andrew is referring. I don't know what the Andrew is talking about in the video that people are referring to. And I think anti-organizationalism is a completely failed perspective. I think that anti-organizationalists have been telling us that we should somehow be trying to organize without organizations pretty much since the anti-organizationalist tendencies have come about, and there is nothing to show for it. There's just no demonstration that you can organize in mass without formal organizations. Formal organization is absolutely necessary. It is not equivalent to a state to have big, wide-scale formal organizations. Once again, I mean, I have no idea what Andrew's talking about in the video, so this is not a critique of Andrew. This is a critique of the sorts of things that I see mutualists talking about on a somewhat regular basis. Their sort of opposition to institutionalization, the opposition to creating long-standing organizations which have their own sort of momentum above and beyond the individual members. I think that this is just now my critique of anti-organizationalism, and that is that you have to have something that has like an institutional memory that can remember all of the struggles and the difficulties that have taken place before. If you don't have an organization that can learn in and of itself above and beyond the singular members, then every time you cycle in new members, they have to learn all of those lessons from scratch. Instead, what you want is the organization to internalize the lessons of the past. You want the organizational structure to be built to prevent failures of the past from taking place again, and to drive the organization in the right direction to do things in the future based on changing conditions. And that's really important because one of the major things that happens to horizontal organizations is them getting co-opted by hierarchical tendencies. So I think that you have to create long-standing organizations. You should not be wanting, an adhocracy where an organization gets created and then dissolves. That's not desirable. I think this is a very unfortunate tendency in anarchism, that anarchists think that it's ideal to create a bunch of temporary organizations. Organizations should exist for as long as the need of the organization exists. So if you're a revolutionary organization, that's a permanent organization until revolution is complete. Which is to say, given that revolution is a process, it takes place over decades, no revolutionary organization should see itself as something that is going to dissolve in short order, because revolution does not end in short order. And for example, let's imagine a post-revolutionary society, though. So in a post-revolutionary society, let's say that what you need to do is food distribution. Well, food distribution, the supply chains, the people who are carrying out the production of food and all of that, those things are going to subtly change over time, but they're not going to change in a huge way over time. So what you need is organizations that persist above and beyond the individuals in the supply chains in order to direct the distribution of food over a very long period of time. And that's because the individuals themselves, even though they're going to be the ones that are situated on the ground with the knowledge, they are also themselves going to have to be habituated to all of the norms and structures that allow broader distribution of food to take place. So they themselves have to learn by being part of the structures. And then the structures are going to be formed by the learning process of the individuals. And that's a feedback process. The individual and the collective are both part of a process. So this is more just my critiques of anti-organizationalism, which I see weirdly has like a huge overlap with mutualism, even though I'm really not sure that Proudhon himself was like strictly anti-organizationalist in that sense. But these are kind of broader concepts, I guess, that I'm getting into here. Let's see here. Anthrodulogist Segundo says, I was going to ask actually about Andrew because I noticed he considered himself an anarchist without adjectives, but I don't recall if that was also your position or if you're an ANCOM. I'm an ANCOM. Yeah, I'm an anarcho-communist. Specifically, I'm an specificist. So that entails an entire revolutionary program, a view about how transformation takes place, the role of a militant anarchist minority in society, the development of a specifically anarchist organization, and its presence within a broader social movement in order to develop social power. So my tendency is especifismo. And I'm eclectic in my theory. And I believe I'm taking especifismo and applying it to the circumstances of Tulsa, Oklahoma. But I still would consider myself broadly, the tendency I agree most with would be especifismo. A Square says, Anarch, if a revolution starts in one place in the world, it probably won't be 100% self-sustaining and will need to interact at some level with other states or entities that exchange goods with it. How can we live under these conditions and try to eliminate the class relations created by commodity production that we would probably have to have at some level in this circumstance? No, I agree with you 100%. I do not believe in this idea that you can have like a global revolution all at once. I think that, unfortunately, this is something that we tried in the early 1900s, but what we see is that revolution in practice is actually quite uneven, and that certain places sprint forward far, far ahead of the pack, and other places go in a slow trudging marathon, just trying to catch up with those who have sprinted ahead. And we have to develop a revolutionary program that takes into consideration this fact. And as you said, with that in mind, we are going to have to interact with the rest of the planet as it currently stands, rather than hoping that we are just going to have a planet full of other highly advanced, like communist projects or anarchist projects that have, you know, moved very deeply into the abolition of commodity production and the socialization or collectivization of land and things like that. Instead, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to act within the conditions that we actually exist within. And those are going to be the conditions of global capitalism, more or less, while we are all in our differing paths, some of us in that slow trudge and some of us in our sprint. So I absolutely agree with you that in that process, we are going to have to, interact with states and entities that exchange goods. And we'll have to try to eliminate class relations and commodity production under those circumstances. But I don't think we're going to be able to fully eliminate commodity production insofar as that we are embedded in a capitalist world. So this is why that I advocate workers' cooperatives as transformative vehicles, because I think that these are perhaps the maximal, or more, maybe really more appropriately, the minimal tool of revolutionary economic approach. So, you know, you kind of like the union and the workers' cooperative as the fighting bodies within capitalism. Right? These are bodies that are only situated to exist within capitalism and commodity production and the law of value. But they are not bodies we would hope would persist into a world where we have begun to eliminate commodity production, because in the world where we have eliminated commodity production, we've transcended the law of value, as we say, then you wouldn't need unions anymore, because the workers would own the means of production and there would be direct distribution based on need, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. And you would need workers' cooperatives, or rather we would hope the workers' cooperatives would then transform into broader direct distribution communes, as we might call them, or collectives that just do distribution based on decentral planning from below. That, however, is a transitionary project. That's a project that takes place in an evolutionary sense. It's gradual as we are able to carry out the processes of decommodification. Now, I know that's all very like abstract, right? I mean, this is a very abstract thing to say, and this is something that I think the left kind of broadly agrees with some significant exceptions. But I guess what I'm getting across here is that you're going to need to have like a maximal component of the revolution and a minimal component of the revolution, where the minimal component is like unions and workers' cooperatives, and the maximal component is like forms of direct distribution, forms of decommodification, things like time banks, forms of mutual aid, especially highly organized and coordinated forms of mutual aid, direct distribution of services, the collectivization of land. These things all have to occur side by side with the minimal program of things like workers' cooperatives and unions. So the way I look at it, and this is kind of something I talk about in After the Revolution, because this is where I kind of lay all of this out. After the Revolution is a video essay I wrote a long time ago on the channel at this point. And in After the Revolution, I kind of talk about how what you want is like this like core of direct decommodification of particular things, especially we would hope of needs. So things like housing, land, food, healthcare, these things we're trying to sprint to decommodify, because these are the basic needs that people have. We want these to be absolutely covered, and we don't want these to be subject to the law of value. However, those things which are, you might say, luxuries, which I don't even mean necessarily luxuries, but things that are not absolute needs, but are instead desires, those are things that we might handle on a market for this transitionary period. So for the period that we exist within global capitalism, we might want to, if we make some particular snack, if we make some particular, good that people just like, then that might be something that we would continue to sell and something we would continue to distribute back and forth with external entities. So the Zapatistas are a good example of this, selling coffee, right? So they produce coffee, and these coffee beans are something that they sell externally. This is something that's not a need. Like, people don't need coffee to live, right? You can not have coffee and live. And that's something that we might be willing to subject to the law of value or commodity production until capitalism has been overthrown. And then we might be able to more safely proceed into the abolition of commodity production more broadly. And the reason I say that things might need to work this way, just kind of justifying my perspective because I jumped past this part. The reason why that we aren't going to be able to abolish commodity production completely while the capitalist system continues to exist is that insofar as the capitalist system exists outside of us, as you said, we are not going to be completely self-sustaining. Therefore, we are going to continue to require trade, and no capitalist system is going to allow us to come to them and to try to integrate them into our decentral planning process where they don't get anything in return for their the exchange of goods with us other than, a token of gratitude and a promise that we're going to distribute them things later. That's just not how the external system works. The capitalist system requires there to be a discrete return on their investment, and that is going to be in the form of money at that minimum. And we would expect that money would be what they would want, and maybe sometimes they would accept like trade of a particular amount of this a particular amount of this, but they're never going to be integrated into our decentral bottom-up planning system. That's something that we integrate within whatever territory has been claimed by horizontal systems. So in that sense, and the inside of the economy, insofar as global capital continues to exist, the inside of an economy will always be kind of forced to quantize itself as per the needs of capital. Capital has judgments of value, which it imposes upon markets or upon economies more broadly. And then inside of that economy, you are forced then to reckon with the value of your distribution of the different assets you have within that system. You are forced to reckon the value of those based on how the rest of the world reckons the value of those. So, especially if you ever plan on the things that you produce within your economy leaving your economy. If the things you produce within your economy leave your economy, then you will then have to have an understanding of how much you're going to sell them for. Okay, which means that when you're producing them internally, you can't produce them at a loss, or when you sell them, you will sell them at a loss. So that means that now inside of your economy, you are forced to take on capitalist valuation of the value of whatever products that you're making. And this is sort of one of the difficulties of reaching full decommodification within a capitalist society. And this is also the reason why that many socialist or communist projects have conceived to themselves that what they want to do is make movement constantly towards self-sufficiency, because under conditions of self-sufficiency, you can stop worrying about the external valuations of your products and stop worrying about quote unquote operating at a loss, and instead now worry about what I've heard Clara Mate, for example, call the law of need rather than the law of value. So yeah, there you go. Acidic Harmony says, for large populations, decision-making would be pretty inefficient and that it would actually disempower... let's go back here. Acidic Harmony says, hey, Anark, been rewatching some streams, and you've said a few times you disagree with Bookchin on preferring majoritarianism to consensus. I find his arguments pretty convincing, that consensus for large populations for large population decision making would be pretty inefficient, and that would actually disempower minority positions by creating a lot of pressure on people to go along with the majority. Curious if you talk about these arguments anywhere or can respond here. Yeah, no, I talk about it in After the Revolution. So a lot of these questions about the nitty gritty about what we do with revolution, these are questions that I answer in After the Revolution. But here, my issue with it is that consensus is supposed to be a process of feedback, and it's supposed to take place at the rate that we actually respond to objections. Is that inefficient? In a time sense, but it may not be inefficient in actually addressing all of the issues with any given plan. Now, I agree with Bookchin. There may be times where a minority position is pressured to stop, presenting the issue, given that they are stopping the whole process from taking place, and people are then probably going to imbue some form of like social sanctions on them. They are going to maybe be impolite or rude to them. They might exclude them. They might try to turn those people into pariahs or something. Absolutely, those things might happen. But I should add, consensus is purposely a system where we are hoping to give voice to minority positions. And sometimes it is good that minority positions are allowed to put the brakes on the process. By contrast, sometimes it's not good that minority positions are able to put the brakes on the process, for example, in the example of reaction. However, this is the reason why we have points of unity or platforms that lay out what the values of the organization are, so that the organization is not just, beholden to any and every perspective on what should be done. Organizations should have clear kind of mission plans about what needs to be done, such that perhaps what can be done is we can discern these minority positions either as being conducive to our broader mission, and therefore maybe they're uncomfortable but necessary, or these minority positions in fact being in contrast to our position, and therefore being an impediment to our broader revolutionary goals. I talk about this, I think, most extensively. I said After the Revolution, but truthfully, I think I talk about this most extensively in my ANARK Abridged video, When Consensus Fails. I think that video, I've referenced that video so many times now. Part of me is starting to think that I should have made it into something even more sophisticated, but the video still remains, I think, a pretty good discussion of the problems with consensus and how those problems might be met. That being said, I recognize that sometimes there are just simply irreconcilable disagreements that do not violate the charter, that simply that you might have just 20% of people just disagree. They just disagree. They don't think this is the right way to go, and it's not necessarily clear what the correct way is to proceed. And it may be good in those occasions, specifically in those occasions where the disagreements are not over something that is part of your foundational platform, to have like a majority fallback system, right? So you would have some majority fallback, whatever that majority might be. I think that 51% is far too low. I think that you'd want to be looking at some like super majority, like 2/3, or even something like 75%, 85%, etc. So I lay out that majority fallback system, that weak consensus majority fallback system in After the Revolution. But I think that if consensus were formalized and people were to understand how the consensus system works, that you would get a lot of people, that you would get a lot of these occasions that would be able to be dealt with within the framework of consensus. Now, I say this recognizing that Bookchin was actually upset because he had dealt with what was, I think they were called the Clamshell Alliance, where you had very large groups of people engaging in large-scale consensus processes. And what he found was, I don't remember what group it was. It was like Mennonites or Amish or something like that. It was like one of those groups that they engage culturally in consensus. And those groups essentially dominated the process because they were so good at using consensus. And Bookchin also felt as if within this process, liberals always forced people to kind of take on the lowest common denominator position within that alliance. So Bookchin was upset about the results of the Clamshell Alliance. He was upset that, I don't remember if they were the Amish or the Mennonites, I always forget which one it is. But one of those groups like that, they essentially were like, they like dominated the process. He thought that that was a bad example. And he didn't like as well how when you got very, very large groups of people together with with largely differing ideological positions, that what tended to happen was that everybody opted for the lowest common denominator, the least risky, the most watered down concepts of a program. And these were Bookchin's personal experiences with consensus at large, and they are what sort of negatively colored his experience of consensus and made him lose faith in the viability of consensus. He then went on to make arguments, very impassioned arguments about the value of majoritarianism by contrast. And I should note, I'm not like completely and utterly opposed to simple majorities. I think that it's ineffective and that it has many negative outcomes, but I also do think sometimes it might be necessary to just get things done, especially when you have like a very pressing issue that just has to be decided on. Then you don't have months to sit around and have these big, long disputes. Give me just a moment. I actually wrote this down one time. I was talking with a fellow organizer about kind of like how I think about these issues. Right. So let me see if this is going to be visible on camera. I don't think this is going to be visible on camera, but just in case, like this is something I wrote a while back. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really bad. It is not focusing. I think if somebody were to zoom in, they could probably read this now. But yeah, I'll just kind of read off some of what I got here. So I think that when you have small groups, consensus is optimal. Okay, just like first of all, like when you have small groups with high ideological consistency, use consensus. There's no reason to create fissures in the organization just with the idea that like, you know, you're worried about large scale problems. But if you're not a large group, then don't worry about that. Just use consensus, especially if you have ideological consistency. It'll move plenty fast if you have ideological consistency. Also, even in large systems, if the decision being made has very high systemic impact, I still think you should use consensus. Yeah, it might take a long time, but if it has high systemic impact, you should be okay with it taking a long time. You know, if you're going to change the foundational charter of your federation, that's probably an example of where you should still use consensus. You know, just argue over it for months and months, years if you have to. It's important. It's going to change the fundamental foundational features of your total social organization. However, if you have large groups, majority opt out is a good way to go. So there's a distinction, I think, here to be made. You have majoritarianism is not just like one particular way of approaching things. So let's say that you have let's say the majority comes to a decision about what should be done, and then the minority is then allowed to simply say, okay, well, we're not going to go along with that. You, the majority, you just go ahead and do the thing. We're not going to stop you, but we don't agree. So we're just going to opt out of that. I call that majority opt out. Okay. By comparison, you have majority compulsory. Now that's the one where anarchists most often have objections. And that is where you have a majority that makes a decision and then the minority has to go along with it. Even there, however, I argue that there are, two different approaches. Okay. You essentially have like a majority where if you have two different situations. You have one where at the beginning of the process, they essentially say, we're going to make decisions through majoritarianism, and those who are in on the process, who agree to the process, are going to do what the majority says beforehand. Okay. And that is like an option that you can have before things take place. And then there's another one where systemically by default, it's compulsory. Like there's no opting for opt out or opt in or any of that. It just majoritarianism 100% of the time. So essentially what I put is that we would hope to have it always be majority opt out or majority opt in if we're going to use majoritarianism, and use majority opt in with like low risk situations. But in the conversation I was having with that person, I said, actually, I do think there is an example where we would sometimes want to use compulsory majoritarianism. And that is in the occasion of somebody who's like violated the fundamental charters of the organization, and somebody who needs to undergo restorative justice or rehabilitation of some kind. This is a situation where the majority trumps the minority, where the minority, the person who has done wrong in this example, who has harmed somebody, doesn't get to just like stop the process because they disagree that they should have to undergo a process of restorative justice. I think we all agree that if they've done like some very serious harm to someone else, that this is a form of compulsory majoritarianism that we would all support. So those are the examples where I think that there maybe is some example of like compulsory majoritarianism that would make sense. And if there were like broader, like repeated violations of the charter, especially perhaps if there were entire organizations that were violating the charter, then what I say is we should be using disassociation. So there should be like disassociation of these organizations. And if the organization that is part of that disassociation or is violating the charter in a very serious way, if they are enacting domination, this may even be called for war. This may even be called for open conflict, not like, social pressure, but like actual full-scale conflict. If people are building hierarchical power structures, then that is a justification for the destruction of those hierarchical power structures. So, yeah. And then I wrote that, you have forms of sanction like deprioritization, exclusion, and public disclosures. But yeah, so I have a very complex view on this, and I haven't really, I would say, like discussed it at length, but I think that if you were to actually build a functioning society which used consensus, it would still probably involve some forms of majoritarianism. However, what I disagree with Bookchin on is that Bookchin's saying we should default to forms of majoritarianism. And I don't think that we should have a default to forms of majoritarianism. I think that majoritarianism, opt-in, opt-out, and compulsory should be used in very particular situations which are formulated in our foundational charters, and that consensus should be used for very important high-impact decisions in our organizations. Quakers, I think, is what the person said. Smitty says it's Quakers use consensus. I think you're right. It was the Quakers that Bookchin was interacting with. Oakley Makes Game says, my physical copy of A Modern Anarchism is ordered. We'll look forward to receiving it. Well, I appreciate you ordering it. I just want to emphasize once again, I said it early in the stream, there is now a release date for the physical copy of A Modern Anarchism. It will be released on October 27th. So I would really love if y'all would go over and pre-order a copy of A Modern Anarchism. This is going to be published by PM Press. This is going to be my first book that is published by a significant sized press. Please go over, pre-order a copy, show PM Press that this book has interest and that my audience is like willing to buy my books. I think the reason why this book was able to get published was partially because I have the YouTube channel, because I have an audience, because I have experience as an organizer and so on. This is essentially this is demonstrating to them that they made a good bet on me, that the print run is going to pay off. Sorry, I'm just looking back over all of the comments here. I've been kind of answering at length on these questions here today. Apache says, why don't anarchists band together and join Black Rose Anarchists, seeing as they're the largest anarchist organization in the U.S.? Well, because Black Rose is not just like open to anybody. Black Rose only takes people who are like really committed anarchists. And as I understand it, anarchists who have already kind of started doing the work. So this is, not just an organization that's open to everyone. That being said, everyone who is an anarchist, I would highly recommend that, especially if you're like a social anarchist, an organizationalist anarchist, go join Black Rose, because you're absolutely right to say that that is the largest and most committed anarchist organization in the United States at the moment. Jessica says, what do you think of anarcho-mutualists' arguments about revealed preference necessitating money? I don't think that's really true. Okay, so I understand their argument, right? Which is to say, if you ask someone, what do you want? And you just, you show them a lineup of things and you ask them, what do you want? It's different from the result if you let them loose in a store with money and have them buy things. That being said, I think that if you were to just give people a variety of options and let them choose between them, they would simply choose the one they want, right? I think the idea that you cannot, for example, have like a catalog of things people could choose from just because they have to state what it is that they want in order to get it produced. I don't think that that really makes sense. I don't think you need money for that process. I think that without money, you could still say, have a catalog of things and people could point their finger and say that one. I think that that is perfectly doable. I don't think that it's necessary to have money to do that. Oh, somebody said, is the question thing working? Oh, weirdly, I don't see the, I actually don't see the question thing. Where is it? Man, the cats be meowing. Okay, we're going to try this super chat goal thing here. We'll see how this thing goes. So, I'm only going to be on here for another probably like hour or so. But if I get 10 super chats in the next hour, then I will send a signed copy of A Modern Anarchism to the highest bidder when A Modern Anarchism releases. So all you would need to do then is show me like a receipt of you being the bidder, the highest one, and I'll send you a signed copy of the book when it releases. What are my thoughts? Okay, so Kvasia says, my question is, what are your thoughts on Deleuze and Guattari? So I haven't read Deleuze and Guattari other than I've read postscripts on Society of Control, I think is what it's called, which was really enlightening. I really enjoyed that. But I have watched a ton of like YouTube videos and summaries of Deleuze and Guattari. And the truth is I think they have a lot of value to say. And the more I've learned, the more I've kind of felt like, yeah, I agree with that. I do think that my biggest criticism of them is I dislike how sort of obscure that they've made everything. I don't like that it seems like they have purposely tried to make their work difficult to consume. And I don't just mean that they use like a lot of technical jargon or something, because I don't have a problem with that. You know, I think that it's important to be able to have like a place where, you know, you have like an academic approach where you, you use words appropriately, you use technical definition in terms of art in precise ways as to convey your ideas, and you're not worried about whether people understand them or not. But it feels sometimes like Deleuze and Guattari, it's almost like they get off on being inscrutable and impossible to understand, and I don't think that was a good thing. I think that was, you know, not an effective way to approach the problem. So yeah, I think that essentially led to their work mostly being adopted by people who are kind of these navel-gazing postmodernist types. And unfortunately, that means that their work has been derailed in the process and has not been able to convey its actual points to its broader audience and to all of the people that it could possibly have convinced in the process. But I should say, like, insofar as that we are viewing Deleuze and Guattari as being part of postmodernism, I think that they're kind of like at the end of postmodernism. It seems to me like they're kind of a transition out of postmodernism and into metamodernism, because whereas most of the postmodernists are sort of like deconstructionist, post-structuralism, Deleuze and Guattari seem like they're kind of returning to a concept of structure. They just think that that structure is arising out of many different a decentralized nodes, sort of a rhizomatic activity is what develops this process. Whereas many of the postmodernists seem to think that there is no actual structure that arises, or that that structure is fully and arbitrarily imposed by human perception. And so Deleuze and Guattari actually like a lot of the conclusions that they came to. I think that it's very difficult to understand what it is that they're trying to say, but the more work that I've done to understand what they're saying, I agree with what a lot of they're saying. Frosty, I'm sorry. I should have noted that I accidentally set it to $5. I should have probably fixed that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I set it to $5 as the minimum. I should have set it to a lower threshold, actually. Not Serial says, do you think the Paris Commune failed because they failed to centralize power like many authoritarian leftists say? No, absolutely not. The Paris Commune would not have survived if they centralized power, y'all. That's crazy talk. I just want to say that as someone who is a horizontalist, I don't think that by contrast, the Paris Commune would have survived if they horizontalized more. The Paris Commune, I don't want to be doomer about it, but they were fucked. Like, they were just completely outgunned. Now, they did make some bad strategic decisions, but at best, they would have been in a holding maneuver over a very long period of time. Probably the only thing they could have done was done like a counteroffensive. They would have had to have like used like very clever guerrilla tactics in a time when that was just like really not a very standardized method of warfare. And that's kind of that's imposing our understandings of how to do war on the past. They just were not factually prepared to defend the autonomous zone that they had created. And I think that insofar as that is the case, they really did not have a possibility of succeeding in defending themselves from such a large and well-armed military with cannons and, many, many more forces than them. I think that this is a sort of like, authoritarian leftists like to say that because they're imagining to themselves, oh, if you'd just done it our way, you would have succeeded. But there's no reason to believe that the Paris Commune would have succeeded, if only that they would have succeeded against a larger, better armed, more experienced army, if only they had had a dictator making all of the decisions. There's no good reason to believe that. Got three donations. First one is from Frosty for €2. He says, trying my luck, I guess. I'm sorry, I didn't set it up right. Another one from T Plank, $10. He said, there you go, comrade. Wish it could be more. Well, I appreciate you nonetheless. 10 makes a big difference. $10 also from Smitty BLT. He said, get a burrito. All right. I mean, now that you said that, I'm pretty much just bound to get a burrito. As you all know, it's the law of donations. Whatever you say in the donation, I'm just required to do that. Let's see here. Willow in the Swamp says, thoughts on communizers or communication. I think you mean, communization. Okay. Yeah. Communization theory. I've had a lot of people asking about that lately, but I haven't read enough to have like a strong opinion on that. Somebody the other day gave me some recommendations. I might read through those before too long. Philosophy Gremlin says, where should one start learning history from a leftist or anarchist perspective? I want to read good sources, but just don't know where to begin. I have two really specific things to recommend. Number one, Means and Ends by Zoe Baker. Number two, Nationalism and Culture by Rudolf Rocker. I think these are both excellent places to begin learning history. Then also Mutual Aid by Peter Kropotkin and The State, Its Historic Role by Peter Kropotkin, as well as Dawn of Everything by David Graeber. I think these are all really good opportunities. Oh yeah, Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, also a great place to learn. So yeah, I recommend all of those sources. Those are all really good places to learn more. Oh, sorry. Murray is getting annoyed by me continuing to be on stream here. Now he's trying to knock around my keyboard. He's laying in front of my keyboard doing tail flicks and bunny kicking my keyboard. He's annoyed that I have been talking so long at y'all. Yeah, I'm surprised I'm getting so many people talking about communizers and communization theory. Not because I have like some negative opinion of it, but just because I've always kind of viewed it as a very obscure tendency. But it's weird that I'm getting so many people talking about it lately. I'm kind of wondering, was there like some big YouTuber that started talking about it, or like some big Twitter personality that really started pushing it recently? Like, I wonder what's been kind of bringing up that tendency on the left these days. Because it seems to me like communization theory, from what I'm understanding of it, seems very anarchistic and very anarchic. But yeah, I'm not sure what happened. It's almost like people want to be Marxists, but they still want to be anarchists. I don't know. Willow in the Swamp says, Anarch, you ready for the Dallas Fort Worth Anarchist Book Fair? Hell yeah, no. I'm definitely going down there. No doubt about that. That's going to be cool. It sounds like I'm going to be giving another talk down there. Maybe we can bring in a camera and record me, and then that can also go up on the YouTube channel. And Arachno Anarchy says, good morning, Daniel. Glad to be here for once. I'm wondering, how do you pace yourself while doing praxis so you don't burn yourself out, but don't fall out of doing praxis consistently? Thanks. I think that's one of the hardest questions. I think that's a very, very hard question. I will say, for my own sake, it's come from like trying to consciously conceptualize my capacity. So like, for example, I tried to say to myself, what is my capacity at right now? With the idea where it's like 100% is the maximum I can operate at without burning out. And anything above 100%, that is going to slowly burn me out. So like 105% over a long period of time, it would burn me out. 110%, a little bit faster. 150%, way faster. 200%, really, really fast. I'd burn out in like a few weeks or a few months or something. And with that in mind, I try to always keep track of like my concept of my rate of burnout, or my concept of my capacity. So like right now, I feel like I'm at like 105% capacity. I can't keep up at the rate I'm at right now, which means I know I need somebody to... Murray, stop. That means I know I need somebody to help me to take some weight off my shoulders, or I need to change the flow of my routines, but I can operate at 105% for a long time. But eventually it will burn me out, right? So eventually it will, but different people have different burnout, right? Some people, when they burn out, they just disappear. Me, I don't disappear. I just operate more poorly. That's all it is. The quality of my work goes down, but I never drop out because my commitment is too high. But what I recommend is like, for yourself, keeping a constant awareness of your capacity, like where you're at percentage wise. And when you're approaching 100%, try not to operate at 100%. Always try to operate short. Always try to operate at like 85%. And when you're getting close to that 85%, start reaching out to others that are helping or that are doing the same things as you, and start kind of trying to get them to help you by being like, hey, I'm at like 85% capacity and I really need help because I'm afraid that I'm kind of approaching a place where if I kept up at this rate, I would burn out. Or if you're at 110%, be like, hey, I'm over capacity. I can do this for a little bit longer, but I'm afraid that I'm going to burn out unless somebody helps me. So I think that like being like conscious about where you're at, like in your total capacity, and reaching out to others when you feel like you're almost over your capacity or you are over your capacity. Really, I should once again note ahead of time before you have reached your capacity is like a big key to it, so that others can begin taking those things off your shoulders. In the meantime, we got two more donations. One from Mike working for, it cut off. Mike, For $5, he says, have you done Toastmasters? You should. I found that it kept me sane during the worst of COVID. I'm actually not super familiar with Toastmasters. If I recall correctly, it's like a club where everybody like gives speeches, but I'm not super familiar. That's just my recollection. I've never done it before. No. The next one is from Melkor for $40. Yeah, no, that's pretty significant. It sounds like you're probably going to be the one. Do you think that having some kind of national anarchist organization in America would be useful to coordinate/unite organizational anarchists, or just provide a forum for them? Also, Waldo to Trotsky pipeline is real. Absolutely. I think that having an anarchist organization that is at the scale of a nation is a good idea, just as if it's good at having an anarchist organization at the scale of your city, at the scale of your state, at the scale of your region, at the scale of your nation, at the scale of your continent, at the scale of the planet. Those things are all good. I think one of the difficulties is that you're not going to be able to really make that work at the scale of a nation until you have a bunch of candidate organizations at the scale of like states or regions or something. So like you have to have your candidate organizations that are going to represent all of these regions or states at smaller scales in order for that ever to really work. So that's not to say don't work to do it, but I would also say, don't put the cart before the horse. Be sure that you're getting together all your candidate organizations before just arbitrarily creating the big national organization, because the national organization is nothing unless it is the combination of the organizations underneath it. Kvasia says Murray is at least 1%. Murray is absolutely at least 1%. Murray is like 3 or 4%, I would say. Bro right now is sapping my capacity. He's over here like he's glaring at me and sighing and flicking his tail at me. He's very upset that I am like rambling at y'all for so long. He's ready for this to be done. T-Plank says, thoughts on books that you would suggest to union members that aren't ready to read Rocker? Okay, well, maybe they aren't ready to read Nationalism and Culture, but I would contend that they still are ready to read Rudolf Rocker, but you should be recommending them Anarcho-Syndicalism Theory and Praxis. Or Practice, I think is what it is. That book is a great primer. In fact, I think that like his intro, like what is anarchism, remains one of the best what is anarchisms that you're going to find. It is one of the best intros to anarchism that I've ever seen in my life. Highly recommend you just tell people, give them a copy of Anarcho-Syndicalism Theory and Practice and just tell them to read chapter 1. But honestly, have them read the whole thing, because it is labor history. It is a bunch of labor history. And it's the practice of anarcho-syndicalism. And I really do think it would give them direction. That book is not super advanced. Rocker is not always super advanced. That book is actually an excellent introduction, by the way. Black Anarchist 1992 says, various anarchist accounts on Twitter have been talking about the communization thing, Anarch. Okay, that's kind of what I thought might be the case. Oh, somebody recommended Fight Like Hell by Kim Kelly. Yeah, I think I'm mutuals with Kim Kelly on one or another platform. I don't remember which one. Might be like Twitter or something. So still got 40 minutes on that goal. Whoever the highest donor is, I will send a signed copy of A Modern Anarchism when it releases. Not Serial says, do you think popular assemblies have the same structural capacity to stop the flow of capital like workplace organizing? Can we rely purely on assemblies without workplace organization? Absolutely not. Yeah, I don't want to. I think that in my work, I've advocated for all kinds of structures, and people have a tendency to think that I'm advocating narrowly for one or another structure. I'm not. I am a structural maximalist. a structural diversity maximalist. I think that you need all kinds of structures. The sad thing is that we just don't have a movement that is able to diversify all of those different structures. And we have a ton of people who are wasting their energies on electoralism. If I just thought all of the people wasting their energy on electoralism and DSA, if all of those people were building unions, building popular assemblies, making workers cooperatives, creating community gardens and agricultural cooperatives and, you know, mutual aid organizations and community defense and all that, we would be so much further as a movement. We would be so much more powerful if people were not wasting their time on electoralism right now. It's really unfortunate. It's kind of frustrating. But I'm not some like popular assembly reductionist or something. I just think that they're very, very important. I think that they might be the most important body because these are the bodies where everything could get coordinated. This is where we want to bring in the unions. We want to bring in the community defense organizations. We want to bring in the people doing mutual aid. We want to bring in the education organizations. We want to get them all together in these popular assemblies along with the people. Okay, that's what I think the value of these are. These are the general bodies where everybody's coming together to make decisions. But I don't think that it's like just build popular assemblies and boom, problem solved. They absolutely cannot replace a union. They cannot replace a workers' cooperative. They cannot replace a commune. These things all have specific purposes, and those specific purposes have to be utilized towards their ends. Black Anarchist says, Anarchism and the Black Revolution will always be a certified hood classic. I love that book. I adore that book. It's fantastic. I think that that book remains the one where when a person asks me, hey, I'm interested in learning about anarchist theory. If they were to just say anarchist theory, like modern anarchist theory, what book should I read? It's still, I think, the book that I would recommend to the most people. Anarchism and the Black Revolution still is probably like, for me, like the gold standard of where to start people. If, however, somebody were just like, I'm trying to teach people about like labor history or something, that's probably not the one that I would probably still say like anarcho-syndicalism in theory and practice. But, you know, that it's, I still think it's probably the best, just like, overall intro to anarchism. If you're trying to get somebody from point A all the way to point B, it's hard to compete with. Melkor says, did you ever get around to reading Daniel Guerin, by the way? You mentioned him in a very early live stream. I did not, no. I got to be honest, my reading has slowed down a lot as of late. I kind of feel like I read like just a ton in the early and middle stages of this channel. And then I think that my brain kind of got burned out. And so now I'm kind of like still kind of recovering, trying to get back to the place I was at where I can kind of like commit myself. I think I spent so much time just reading theory that my brain, it like flattened the dimensions of my brain. And so I'm trying to enrich my brain again with like art and life so that I can then once again take that enrichment and bring it back to theory again. So I'm only now starting to come back to reading theory again, and I've almost finished Origins of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt, for example. Dayman, Fighter of the Nightman, says, sometimes I feel like some of the chatters in these streams have not watched your older content. Most of the time, I don't think people have. A lot of my current viewers are not the people who were here when I first started like making video essays and stuff. I just want to say, for anybody, somebody donated $5 and said, can't seem to change the amount for the goal thing. I tried. I clicked through and it doesn't allow me. It doesn't allow me to change the amount. I wish I could. That'd be easier. I'd switch it down to 2 probably. Wait. No, yeah, it doesn't let me. Yeah, no, I just want to say that if you're somebody who came around to this channel like in the era of me doing Anarch Responds, 'Responds" or Anarch Abridged or whatever, the highest quality material that I ever put out on this channel were the video essays. Just go look at the playlist that says video essays. That remains the best material I've ever put out on this channel. It's the material I'm most proud of. It's the material that I think like will leave a legacy. It's the material I think will make an impact. I highly recommend that y'all go watch those video essays. Like, I put so much work into those. All of those took months. Some of them took years. So like A Modern Anarchism took years, all 4 parts together, numerous years. That's why they were able to be published into a book, because there was so much information that went into those that they were worthy of being a book, if you get what I'm saying. So I highly recommend, please go watch the video essays that I've done. And especially right now, I think we're in such difficult times. Y'all should go watch Hope. That video remains one of my best videos I've ever created. And if you just want to understand, if you're just like looking for the Rosetta Stone of my work, go watch Power. Power is like the entry point to all of my theory. Oh, got another donation for $45 from Yapaboo. That's awesome. That's fucking so cool. I appreciate you. That's fantastic. We got an arms race going on here. Melkor says, and even though it's kind of slop, I love your videos responding to MLs and Maoists and libertarians. Yeah, those videos I don't even deny. Those are the most slop videos. Those react videos, the response videos, those are beneath the general quality of the channel, in my opinion. But I created them because people liked them, sadly. You know, this is kind of something I've run into numerous times. Like, the material I want to create on the channel, I just want to create video essays, y'all. Like, that's what I really want. I want to just like fucking disappear for like 8 months, like fucking H Bomber guy, and come back with a banger video essay and get like 1 million views. Okay. Like, that's what I want out of this channel. Okay. But that is just not what works in the algorithm. In the algorithm, the only thing that really works is like constantly pumping out material at a regular rate. And if you stop pumping out material, the channel just dies. And I should note, like, for those of you who are watching this, I'm sure most of you are subscribed, but I just want to note that subscribers have slowed down enormously on the channel. And that's really unfortunate. It's like really slowing down the growth of the channel. I hit 40K and it's like the channel just petered off. But I also want to suggest, it looks like the most recent video that I've published has released. I'm just going to link it here in the chat. I'm also going to go, put it in all the places. Give me just a second here. Give me a sec. I'm sharing it in all the places. I need to share it all over the place. Boop, boop, boop. Yep, sharing it all over the place. Okay, cool. Share it in a bunch of places. Yeah. So the newest video just released. Go over there, watch that. That is gave a talk in New York City. They flew me out to Manhattan, to Woodbine, and I gave a talk about Cooperation Tulsa, and I gave a talk and how it relates to my work in modern anarchism. Warder Watts says, did you ever look at S4A's response video to your Marxism-Leninism Never Works video? Yeah, no, that video. So I watched that. I watched the Bad Empanada video. I watched part of the Charlatix video. The S4A video was 100% worthy of a response. I probably will respond to the bad empanada video, not as worthy of a response, but the S4A video, I've already actually written up a lot of response, and now I'm just going to go through and do a bunch of citation. Probably going to record the response next Thursday, this coming Thursday. So expect to see that maybe in a couple weeks, if I had to guess. Not Serial says, your video on campism and the house is on fire have the same number of views despite the difference in effort. Yeah, I mean, y'all, this is the discouragement of being a YouTuber. I'm over here like I'm going to put all this work into this material. I'm going to make this material so good. And then it like just does okay. And then I'm like, I'm going to ramble on stream and then clip it. And people are like fucking flooding into that. It's just tiring. Nonetheless, I remain committed to just making material that really matters. That's my perspective. Going to continue making high quality material. I'm not going to stoop to what the algorithm wants. I'm going to make what I think is valuable. I want this channel to create revolutionaries. I want this to be a place where revolutionary theory and practice is discussed. I do not want this to become a place where we, I don't want this to just become a YouTube slop account. I'm not trying to follow the bad empanada model. So around here, we're actually trying to educate revolutionaries. We're actually trying to talk about revolutionary history. We're not just trying to posture on the internet. So, yeah. Speaking of, the Woodbine talk there has gotten like terrible views, doing awful in the algorithm. Not shocking, I suppose. So yeah, go over and watch the newest video if you're trying to help the channel, trying to reward me for making material about revolution, about a revolutionary praxis and all of that. That's what you got to do, y'all. You got to watch the thing. The Wind Cow says, what's your advice for organizing with religious people, specifically Christians? I would say that ignore their religion and focus on their values. Like, focus on their values. If they are actually like Christians that take seriously the New Testament, then you should be able to appeal to them on their values of caring about the downtrodden, caring about those who are at the bottom of the, bottom of the pecking order. You should be able to appeal to their willingness to self-sacrifice. You should be able to appeal to them, their goodness. Those should be things that you are trying to appeal to. I would say if you are not religious, don't spend too much time talking about religion, because all that's going to do is probably lead to a discussion where you have to demonstrate to them that you don't agree with their religion. But try to appeal to their ethics and try to get them involved in projects that really matter to them. I would say that if they're a Christian, show them Leo Tolstoy's "The Kingdom of God is Within You." That is essentially the Bible of Christian anarchism. It's a great place to go. But yeah, no, I mean, don't take for granted that they're going to be your opponents. They're only your opponents if they are not consistent Christians and they have inconsistent values. But don't let that be an impediment. Don't let a person's religion be an impediment to organizing with them. Even if you disagree with their religion, you think their religion's harmful, take each person individually and approach them with their values individually. That's my approach. Philosophy Gremlin says, it's really sad that pretty much all the mainstream leftist stuff is slop and or Marxist-Leninist crap. Wish we had more creators like you. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying my best not to fall victim to that and not to compete with them on this very low sort of swamping, swamp-like playing field. And it's difficult because it means that the channel is not doing as well as it could be doing. But I remain committed to making high quality material and not slop. And that's very challenging when what actually makes you succeed in the YouTube ecosystem is slop. Very, very frustrating. Yeah, other person says, people flood to the stream clips, I think, because they're looking for topical information. And sadly, rather than discussing kinds of organizing, class struggle, etc., a lot of leftists would prefer. Yeah, no, sadly true, sadly true. Mokokopi says, your video essays accompany me to this day and are my go-to to my friends to make them accustomed to libertarian communism. That is very, very encouraging. I appreciate you telling me that. I need these sorts of encouragements given how difficult this is, y'all. I mean, this has unfortunately, or not unfortunately, this has become my profession. I now do this in order to make my income, and it's very hard to know that I am purposely hamstringing my income for my values. Like, it would be so much easier to do so many different things that would lower the tone and quality of this channel, but would make it succeed so much faster. So much faster. So very, very frustrating. Jessica says, your video essays still rock. F the algorithm. I appreciate that. I do. The one and only T-Stir says, what do you think of queer anarchism? Queer anarchism is super cool. I mentioned queer anarchism in A Modern Anarchism, if you want to kind of see some of my takes on it. I make citation to various essays on queer anarchism and anarchist feminism. Cafe Kyoto's here. You're doing awesome work. Hell yeah, I appreciate that. We should collaborate sometime. I really appreciate you being here in the stream chat. Good to see you. Got some recurring members here. Long Defiant has been a member for 30 months. That's awesome. Yeah, you're one of the oldest ones now. We also got Mike working for Green. There we go. I can see the whole name now. Also been a member for 23 months. I just want to remind everybody that if you don't want to use the Patreon, which I highly recommend, go to my Patreon, because this is one of the ways that y'all can help me survive without me having to become a slop tuber. Okay, you want to ensure that I don't become a slop tuber. You want to ensure that I don't fall to all of these very low imperatives. You want to make sure that I don't have this strong drive to make this low crap material that pulls in views. Please go over to my Patreon. This is what allows me to survive without doing that. That's what allows me to not fall victim to those imperatives. So please, if you have money to spare, go over to my Patreon, become a patron for any amount. I used to give the numbers, but now there's more. I added new tiers. So now there's, I also added a $50 a month and $100 a month tier. So if you have a bunch of money to spare, please consider, extending that generosity to the Patreon, become a patron. Allow me to focus on making higher quality work rather than stressing about somehow trying to thread the needle in creating high quality work that appeals to people and then doesn't, allow me not to have to just pump out a bunch of stream clips. Okay. Allow me not to have to do that by going and becoming a patron for any amount over on my Patreon. Because that's what allows me not to do that. Legend Link says, Anark and Cafe Kyoto collab would be great, especially if you make a primer together that could be in English and Spanish. That'd be fucking awesome, actually. That'd be super cool. Yeah, between English, Spanish, and French sources, getting theory through the language barrier is hard. Agreed. Yeah, it is. Not Serial says, how can we keep the alternative institutions that we build from simply becoming NGOs and integrating into capitalism and keeping them actually revolutionary? Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. There's a co-opting and a recuperating effect while being within hierarchical power structures of any kind, capitalism included. And it's partially because there's all these imperatives that, like I was telling you just a minute ago, right? Like the imperatives of YouTube are trying to push me to become a slop tuber. I don't want to, so I'm resisting it. But the imperatives are there. The incentives are to do it, and the disincentives are that it's going to be hard for me to live. Like, it's hard for me to make ends meet. Like, inflation continues, but my income is barely continuing. I'm basically just continuing to live at subsistence, like barely above subsistence. And then now I have a production assistant and I'm paying her part of my income. So I'm really back to just at subsistence. Okay. And that is the same thing with operating as a revolutionary organization. There's all these incentives and disincentives that push you towards trying to only appeal to the lowest common denominator, that push you to try to appeal to hierarchical institutions. And it doesn't really get better as you get more powerful. The pressures actually get larger because now you're trying to maintain your gains. How do you fight back against it? Well, you create an educated revolutionary constituency within the organization. You have a strong platform that you don't flex on. The platform is your guiding light, and that platform is revolutionary in its thrust, and it continues to push you towards revolutionary values. And those revolutionary values take the front seat. They take the driver's seat, and everything else is in the back seat. And that's easier said than done, but it requires the cultivation of a revolutionary organization and the cultivation of revolutionaries within the organization. A Modern Anarchism parts 3 and 4, I think, are partially answering your question. Philosophy Gremlin says, do you ever find content creation dehumanizing in a certain way? Just like any work under capitalism, I imagine that the concern for money might require you to do things you don't want to do. Yeah, I mean, just like I just described. There's also this parasociality, where people get so attached to me as a person that they feel like they need me to be an extension of them. They need me to agree with them on everything. They need me to do what they would want to do if they had my platform. When I disagree with them, it becomes this deep betrayal, you know? It's frustrating because it's like, no, I'm going to continue doing what I think should be done on this channel. But any decision comes with consequences. Every decision I could make comes along with the way that it would like upset some specific person. And that's a challenge. You know, you're always trying to tread this line between like maintaining your own values, but also like making material that appeals to the people who are in your audience and in the people who would potentially be in your audience. But all of those people, they have like a distorted view of you. The view of you they have is the view of you as a content creator. They know you as the person who makes videos. They know you as the person who is on live stream, making commentary and all of that. They don't know you as the person in your personal life. They don't know you as the person who has flaws, who has desires, who has, you know, a personal perspective on things. And so there is this betrayal when you have any values that sort of diverge from their perspectives. And that can be very, very tiring, to be honest. But yeah, like this most recent video, Prefiguration and Power, the talk I gave at Woodbine, was doing garbage. Like the Marxism-Leninism doesn't work video, 600, by this point, it already had 600, almost 700 views. This video where I give like a comprehensive breakdown of what Cooperation Tulsa is doing in the stuff I talk about in A Modern Anarchism has 125 views, literally doing worse than 30% as good as the stream clip. A stream clip. It's crazy. I had to fly out to New York. We took cameras. We filmed me giving the talk. I had to then edit it. I had to create the slideshow. I had to then edit the clips all together. And then I had to take the B-roll and put it together. It took like, what was it, since May. Since May. So it's been like an entire month since then. It took like an entire month to get it all finished, and it's doing garbage. It's doing bad. Yeah, frustrating. Philosophy Gremlin says, would you be doing similar work under anarchism, or would you have other goals in mind? I'd probably be a philosopher and a fiction writer. Like I love philosophy and fiction. I've always been like a world builder. I love writing fiction. That was my dream, was since 15, was to be a fiction author. But it's not what the world needed. What the world needed was being a revolutionary. What the world needed was somebody who would zealously take up the cause of revolution. What the world needed was somebody who would write political theory, somebody who would do the work, get on the ground, get their hands dirty, and get things done. The world didn't need another artist. No offense intended to anybody who chose that path. And I admire you if you achieved it. That's great. But like what the world, I was capable of doing what I just described. I was capable of being the warrior and the scholar at the same time. And so it was imperative upon me to take that on my shoulders. It was imperative upon me to do both, to act on the ground, to change conditions, while also writing theory, while also inspiring other revolutionaries. That was the work I chose. And it's not the work that I would have done in a different world. In a different world, I would have been a philosopher. I love philosophy. I love writing philosophy. I would have been a fiction author. I would have been writing all kinds of different fiction. I would have been an artist. I probably would also have been like a visual artist. When I was really young, I wanted to be a pencil artist. The world not only like didn't have much room for that, but also what the world really needed was somebody who was going to fight against the conditions as they stood. Like, what we need in this world is revolutionaries, so that the Daniel who would be born in a later world could be a philosopher and could be an artist. I'm fighting for the alternative version of myself as much as I'm fighting for all of the other people who never get to experience their potential, for all the people who don't get to be philosophers and artists, and all of the people who don't get to achieve their dreams within the conditions as they exist. I chose that kind of self-sacrifice, and it's challenging to know that I had to sacrifice that, because those are things which are deeply, deeply gratifying to me. But they're things that are very difficult to achieve in the world as it stands. And not even if I could achieve them, I just want to note, even if I could achieve them, they are the world. I can provide either. I could provide either to the world. Right? I could be an artist and all of that, or I could be a philosopher and a political theorist and an organizer, but the world needs the latter. It needs the political theorist and the organizer. That's what it needs. And so that's what I chose. It's a form of self-sacrifice. But it's something that I've attempted to bring my artistic sensibilities to as much as is conceivably possible, so that it is gratifying to me as well as to my viewers. Hastings says, question, since you're a big fan of revolution, what are your thoughts on Mao Zedong? I think you can find my thoughts on Mao Zedong in part 3 of The State is Counter-Revolutionary. I recommend you go watch that video essay. Zolthar says, I do consider nonfiction writing to be an art form. It's self-expression still, just not a way that people typically think of as art. Yeah, no, I try to bring my artistic sensibilities to it, for sure. I definitely don't want to make it this dry, dead material. Like, I want to make it like very academic and precise, but I also want to make it beautiful as much as conceivably possible. Mokokopi says, revolution or insurrection? I don't think I buy into this dichotomy, to be honest. When I hear what people describe as insurrection, it just sounds like revolution. I think that the problem with this concept of the dichotomy here is the concept that revolution is like this single armed coup in their mind, and insurrection is framed as like this constant process of rebellion and in construction. And I don't really see that. I don't see it that way. Revolution to me is an evolutionary process, a process of both conflict and construction. So I don't think that insurrection as it's framed in insurrectionary anarchism is different than revolution. Melkor says, you got me into organizing Anark, and I know other people who also got into it through your content. Yeah, and that's the reason I do this. That's the reason I do this. That's the reason I do this rather than, you know, there's so many other things that I could have done that probably would have made me a lot better money. There are just so many other ways that would have made me a lot better money. And I chose not to do that because this, I thought, was the best way to spread revolutionary values. And I continue organizing on the ground, and I do it because I think that it does spread revolutionary values. And, you know, maybe the channel doesn't grow that fast, but I'm choosing quality over quantity, and I'm trying to put that like pure intention into the world. I'm trying to act with like really, truly pure revolutionary values. You know, I'm a human being. I have flaws, you know, but like I'm trying to act with like a truly revolutionary orientation in everything I do. Everything I do, I'm really asking myself, how is this operative in creating a transformation of conditions? So, yeah. Knowledge and Defense says, I thought it was the other way around. I've heard them framed, both of them, as the other way around. I've heard insurrection framed as being the coup that overthrows everything. But then you read insurrectionary literature, and that doesn't seem to be what they say. Insurrection is just all of those acts of rebellion and undermining of the system. And so I don't really, when I read insurrectionary literature, I don't find myself thinking like, wow, really good points about revolution. I find myself going like, wow, this seems mostly like a dispute about terminology. Flinter says, why do you think most left-wing organizations in the modern day are mostly full of downwardly mobile rich kids instead of actual working class and marginalized people? That's because most left-wing organizations aren't actually trying to construct power to develop leverage over the prevailing power structures. They are instead full of people who feel a responsibility and a commitment to changing conditions without actually understanding how to change conditions. So the reason why historically we had so many working people was because historically we understood that what we were trying to do was develop power so that we could create leverage so that we could overthrow the system. But that requires actually getting on the ground, meeting normal people, and then not rejecting them when they're imperfect. Okay? And this is one of the things. One of the best ways you could tell if somebody actually has contact with organizing on the ground, how judgmental are they of the average person? If they constantly, like, don't get me wrong, people have all kinds of really bad ideas. They have all kinds of toxic conceptions. People have all kinds of backwards ideas about the world. And you're going to find those ideas every time you interact with the average person. That's just par for the course. And I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but if you actually have a commitment to organizing on the ground, if you actually have a commitment to constructing a revolutionary power, then you have a higher commitment than condemning the average person that you meet. That commitment overrides your desire to shit on the average person for having a backwards idea or for not being evolved enough. Instead, what you start to do is you start asking questions. How do I bring this person into a structure that can actually make changes? You don't ask, how can I exclude them? You ask, how can I include them? How can I create a structure which brings this person's powers to bear in transforming conditions? Whereas if what you've done is you've educated yourself online, you've read theory, or you're constantly just keyed in on current events, what it does is it just develops a feeling of guilt. And that is mostly going to be operative in people that have places of relative privilege. And then that is going to instead make you want to engage in a way that makes you feel less guilty about your position of relative privilege. And a lot of modern leftists are those latter type and not the former type. I am of the former type. I don't care about making you feel guilty. I don't care about your position of relative privilege. I care about what you do to transform conditions. I care about how you organize the people to develop power such that we have leverage over the systems that exist and such that we can carry out a revolutionary transformation of conditions. And what that means is that I am willing to meet people where they are at in those conditions. I'm willing to meet people where they are at with their flaws, with their difficulties, with their backwards conceptions, and to bring them into structures which can transform conditions. Okay? Because historically, this was the purpose of the union. You know, you didn't go into a union, into a workplace, a non-unionized workplace back in the day and say, who here has reactionary ideas? Okay, get out. You can't be in the union. That would have been idiotic. That is an ineffective way of organizing people, okay? If you wanted to organize a union, when you went into that workplace, here's what you said to them. You said, you all have a vested interest in transforming conditions. You all want to join this union because this union is what unifies you together. It is what allows you as a people in this workplace to transform your conditions, to collectively bargain together to get what you need from this boss, such that you have more time to relax with your family, so that you have vacation time, so that you have more wages. You didn't go in there being like, well, do you have backwards ideas about Iran? Like that's navel gazing internet shit. Okay. Like that's middle class guilt politics. Like all these people who want you to focus on like whether you do or don't express solidarity with some fucking foreign theocratic regime like Iran or something. These are people that don't have experience on the ground. These are people who have never organized anybody to actually develop power on the ground. What I'm trying to do with this channel is I'm trying to teach y'all what it looks like to actually develop revolutionary values and not to just be opportunist grifters and to not get into this navel gazing, middle class, downwardly mobile guilt politics. Because that's what all these fucking big streamers want you to do. They want you to get involved in these fucking politics of guilt where you feel bad about yourself and you posture on the internet. You never organize an actual constituency on the ground. Organizing a constituency on the ground requires you to accept people with flaws. It requires you to come meet a group of people that have all kinds of different views that are a bunch of really, honestly, a lot of the time, really stupid backwards views. And yet to accept that those people still deserve dignity and still deserve power together. That's what you've got to do. That's what you've got to do. And a lot of the people that we are talking about here, a lot of people that are drawn to leftist politics these days are not people who have the stomach for that kind of thing. And so if you want to transform those conditions, you need to shed that whole concept. You need to shed this whole idea of your guilt politics. Don't get me wrong. Once again, this is not to absolve people of having bad backwards ideas. Like people have all kinds of really bad and stupid ideas, and you're going to have to organize people that have really bad and stupid ideas. And you and me and everyone else still has a bunch of bad and stupid ideas. But like, that is what leads to what you were talking about. Damn, Frosty donated 100 euros. That is incredible. Holy shit. Wow. They said, thank you for all your hard work. It is deeply appreciated by people all around the world. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for being so generous. That's That's amazing. Wow. I'm humbled by that. Yeah, there's like 1 minute left for 3 more donations. That's fucking incredible. Y'all are so generous. I appreciate you enormously. That's awesome. Wow. Anyway. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the answer to the question, in my opinion. I think that we have forgotten that our role is to organize people in their current conditions, not to organize ideal, perfect people who have all their revolutionary values in place. Our purpose as the organizers is to have our revolutionary values in place. But the people we are organizing, we must understand that those people are going to have flaws. Those people are going to be behind the curve. Okay? Those people aren't there yet. One of the best ways you want to transform people's ideas, do not insult and harangue and judge them. You start by bringing them into a revolutionary structure. Bring them into a revolutionary structure, okay? That is what it really boils down to. You have to bring them into this revolutionary structure. You have to demonstrate to them what it looks like to develop power together with other real human beings, okay? Because wait, you're going to go in there and then it's all ideology? All you've got to offer them is ideas? All you've got to offer them is the feel good of being on the right side of an issue? Well, that's great if all you want to do is get them out to a protest, but that is not worth jack shit if you want that person to get outside of their comfort zone and sacrifice of themselves to build real leverage, real revolutionary values in a system which is going to punish them very, very deeply. You have to convince them that there is a reason why they're going to make this kind of self-sacrifice. That there is a reason. If all you're doing is going to them and being like, well, here's all the theoretical reasons why you should be good, but you can't demonstrate to them what actual value this is going to provide them and others in the process, then you will never get anywhere. You will never organize anything. Nothing you organize will ever have an effect on the world. And that's the message I want to bring here. That's the thing that I'm trying to convey with this channel. That's the reason I talk about power all the time. It's the reason I talk about power structures. This is the reason why I'm a revolutionary. I'm not a reformist. I'm somebody who believes that the only thing that will ever bring about transformation of this society is going to war with this society by creating the counter structure that will be a threat to the society as it stands. So if you want to cure your coalitions of this sort of like idealist, navel gazing, downwardly mobile, middle class, professional managerial bullshit, you don't do it by sitting around guilting them for their background or guilting them for being impure. You do it by organizing a real body of revolutionary power that organizes to exact leverage over prevailing hierarchical power structures. And if it is not that, then it will ultimately never, ever bring in the widest variety of people. It will never bring in the constituency that is necessary to transform conditions. You will just end up being a glorified reading group in all circumstances. Looks like y'all liked my ramble. Okay, glad to hear it. Glad to hear it, because I mean that. I mean what I'm saying right now. This is so important. Rowan Bauer says, on the topic of organizing with difficult people, how do you organize with the apathetic? I think that that can be a challenge, but I do think that it kind of is like what I just discussed. Like, you really have to develop a body which demonstrates to them that you are fighting for their interests. Okay. So it's like, it's super easy to become apathetic when you look around you and all you have is a bunch of people who just want you to talk all day long about the ideas you've got and the wrong ideas you've got and how they're wrong. And once again, I'm not saying, I want to make note here That doesn't mean that that's not a necessary part of the process. It absolutely is a necessary part of the process. But if that's all you're offering them, expect them to continue being apathetic. Okay? You can talk all day long about how like, well, then they don't deserve. Shut up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You have to meet people where they are at. You don't get to dictate what the actual conditions of people's lives are. Okay? People's minds, they are where they are, for better or for worse. Okay? And you, as an organizer, if you are actually a revolutionary, you have to start with a radical recognition that people are where they are. Not where you wish they were, where they are. Okay? So when you come across an apathetic person, you can't start with a frustration that they're apathetic. That's a fucking waste of your time. Okay? It's a waste of your time to be frustrated with them for being apathetic. It's a waste of your time to be frustrated with them for having all kinds of stupid backward ideas. You need to approach them with a recognition that it is your responsibility as a revolutionary. You are the one that has taken upon your shoulders to have revolutionary values. You are the one with the commitment to organize people to a revolutionary change. Not them. Not them. They're not there yet. You are the one with that responsibility. And that means you can't start with the expectation that they're like the people in your Twitter arguments. These are people that are living in the real world. And it's not to say, once again, that they got all their ideas right. They probably have so many idiotic ideas. But you have to start with the recognition they are where they are. You need to practice radical acceptance. And only from that position of radical acceptance can you change their mind. I know that's a weird, almost contradictory sounding perspective, but that is the fact of the matter. You start by accepting, yeah, I understand that is where you are. I understand the world is overwhelming. The world does make you feel apathy. It is terrifying and it feels like there's no hope. And the only way you're going to change their mind is when you start from that, without judgment, with calm, reflective acceptance, and then a slow attempt to walk them down the path towards radicalization. And that starts, we always say, agitate, educate, organize. Agitate, educate, organize. Agitate, step number one. They need to become aware of the injustice of their circumstance, and they need to understand that it is not a permanent affair. You start by making them understand that this is arbitrary and that these circumstances have been imposed upon them by systems of domination and that it doesn't have to be that way. Okay? Sometimes they can stay apathetic after that. Then you are going to educate them. Okay? You're going to then begin to provide them the framework for understanding the world. That's what I do. Okay. Like maybe I do a little bit of the agitate part, for example, the house is on fire is a little bit of the agitate part. Okay. But I try to do the educate part for the most part. I'm there later down the pipeline. And then my role in the whole thing is converting from educate to organize. I'm trying to get y'all to go from educate to organize and for you to understand what it looks like to take people from educate to organize. That's a lot of what I do on this channel. But I just want to emphasize that it starts with radical acceptance of where people are, and that only after you've practiced the radical acceptance of where people are can you begin to move people past where they are. But it never works for you to start with a place of judgment. Trying to make people ashamed of the way that they already are never works. Making people ashamed of the things they've done never works. I mean, maybe with a rare circumstance, it might work. But for most people, all it does is it causes them to shut down or to resent you. And so that you should ask yourself, how valuable is it for you to just get a bunch of people to resent you? And if the answer is not very valuable, then I recommend you stop trying to shame people for being wrong. That's not going to help. And I mean that mostly and especially for people that are not down the path, right? So the goal ended. It was 9 out of 10, but I'm going to accept that $1 one there. I think the highest bid ended up being $100, which is so fucking awesome. That's so cool. I appreciate y'all. This is just fucking sweet. like Frosty 1010. I just want to emphasize to you, contact me somewhere. I don't know where we have contact. Send me, I don't know, like a screenshot of your user, like you logged in as the user or something. Just send me proof that you were the one that sent the 100, and give me your address. And when A Modern Anarchism is released, I will sign you a copy and I will send it to you personally, my friend. And thank you so much for everybody that's donated. That's just awesome. I appreciate y'all so much. You're the reason why I can keep doing this. You're the reason why I can keep doing this rather than making slop, okay? Like, the only reason why I don't have to make slop is because y'all keep helping. I just want to emphasize that. I would not be able to do this otherwise. G. Washington says, you seem to have great knowledge on the topic that you're talking about. So can you recommend some great books and also a great book on revolution? Thanks for your great knowledge. Well, I mean, you know, I made a series of videos that are reading list videos, and the whole purpose of those videos is to give you that sort of reading list. But I want to suggest, if the things that I'm saying to you right now are really inspiring to you, if this makes sense to you, if what I'm saying right now, like this really sinks in, this clicks, and this like motivates you and you feel something like a fire in your chest, you should be going and watching my video essays. Like, read A Modern Anarchism. Like, go read or listen to Constructing the Revolution. Go read or listen to Power. Go read or listen to Hope. Like, these are all meant for you. They're meant for you. If that, what I just said right there, if that connected, if that one right there, if that made sense, the video essays are made for you. So you can skip all the other content. Go to the video essays. That's what they're there for. AJ Prince says, have you read Don't Talk About Politics? It's on my list, but my understanding is that debate or even conversation are generally ineffective at changing minds. Action is much better suited. Doing the thing as a thing is infinitely more effective at convincing others to do the same. I agree with that. I agree. Don't get me wrong. I engage in argument, and I debate, and I love disputing things with people, but the real thing that changes people's conceptions, the real thing that changes their ideas of the world absolutely is a demonstration of effectiveness, especially the average person. Maybe people like the people that are here in the stream, you know, we are like, you know, we might be convinced by the ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that, certainly. But like, I just want to say that the average person, like the you know, the normie, 99% of people who aren't like us, those people are going to be convinced by demonstration that what you're saying is actually going to make a difference in their life, okay? Especially in an internet era where there's like 1,000 different ideologies that are all posturing to be the ones that have the ultimate truth. Like, how the fuck do you expect them to discern your view as being correct from all of the other fucking people that are knocking on their door, euphemistically, I mean, you know, who are, you know, soliciting for their attention, that also claim to have the answers? How do you convince them? The answer, I contend, is that you have to demonstrate to them that your version actually has the capability to make a change in their life. You have to show them that your version is meaningful, that it extracts outcomes. That's the answer. That's the answer. You have to eliminate their alienation, lower their alienation from control in society. That is invigorating and inspiring. That's why the Union was so powerful in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and still to this day, arguably, is that it was like this real engine for power for the people. Real engine for solidarity. And it caused people to transcend all of these petty divisions and fears and disagreements that they had. You know, it caused people to work together even when they hated each other. Do you know how many people in the labor movement fucking hated each other? God, they were so frustrated with each other all the time. But when the fucking rubber meets the road, they were willing to work with one another. When the rubber meets the road, they were willing to do what was necessary to build out a union. They weren't going to fuck the union up because they had a disagreement with some other person. They weren't going to fuck up the Federation. Don't get me wrong, there were examples, but usually solidarity overcame these divisions. And I just want to emphasize that solidarity was not a buzzword. You know, these days we say solidarity with person X we've never met. Solidarity with some nation that we have no effect on. No, solidarity is an action that takes place between people. Solidarity is something you do. Solidarity is not just an affection that you express to others. Solidarity is an action. It is about actually tolerating difference. It is about weathering difficulty together. It is about an active conversation, a reciprocal process of feedback where we work together to get things done regardless of our differences. Solidarity does not mean uniformity. Solidarity is about working together toward a goal with other people in a material sense. Unruly says, to what extent, in your opinion, has a liberal influence on anarchism contributed to the movement's impotence today? I don't really think it's about liberalism, because like if you were to ask me what has led to the impotence of the anarchist movement today, it would be like anti-organizationalism is the main culprit, in my opinion. It's that you have so many anarchists who are against forming formal organizations, because formal organizations, in my opinion, are absolutely base requisites of building any sort of large scale revolutionary condition. I would say it's you have a bunch of anarchists who no longer want to talk about revolution. Now all they want is just like, affinity groups where they do a bunch of direct action in the streets instead of actually building the sorts of revolutionary constituencies that I've just discussed here. And I don't think that has anything to do with liberal influences. Like liberalism would be telling them to go do electoralism. No, I think this is very much something that arose within the anarchist movement, and it's just a deeply wrong-headed conception of how to get things done within the anarchist movement. I think that anarchism contains an enormous diversity of thought, and that some of these ideas within the anarchist movement simply are and were and always have been ineffective. And one of those and I think maybe the most pernicious of them, is anti-organizationalism. Anti-organizationalism is utterly ineffective, and it has hamstringed the anarchist movement for a long time at this point. I hear the anti-organizationalists always being like, why can't you stop complaining and just do your thing? Why do you have to be upset at us for doing anti-organizationalism? Because, y'all, we don't have that many fucking people. Okay? We need everybody who is everybody who has realized that hierarchical power is a problem. We need to be organizing together in a front to get things done. We need to be coordinating our powers together to create social power in order to embed in a broader social movement. We can't have everybody facing in different directions. We need everybody facing in the same direction. We need a vector of power where we can exert power. We don't need everybody scattered in 1,000 different places doing a bunch of random ass bullshit and then just hoping maybe on a lark one thing is going to work. Like, we need people to stop doing things that don't work and to focus their mind on doing things that do work. And so that's the reason why it's frustrating having a bunch of people who have realized the symptom is hierarchical power, then not doing what's necessary to undermine hierarchical power. And so, I don't think it has really anything to do with liberalism being an influence. I think it has everything to do with errant tendencies within anarchism undermining the goals of anarchism. Hazal-Din, who I'm going to assume is not Hazal-Din, says, how do you reconcile saying solidarity means organizing with people despite differences with your belief that left unity is a lie? Because it doesn't mean organizing with people who don't want your ends and have means which are contradictory to yours. So, for example, when I say it's about organizing with people despite differences, that doesn't mean I think you should go organize with the Democratic Party. Why? Because organizing with the Democratic Party means undermining your means and your ends. So like, what's the Democratic Party wants you to do? The Democratic Party wants you to go vote in elections. The Democratic Party wants you to go canvass for Democrats. The Democratic Party wants you to go, phone bank. But those things don't achieve our ends. Those, in fact, actively work against our ends. So working with them undermines the goals that we want to achieve. Likewise, authoritarian leftists and anarchists or libertarian socialists working together, these are directly contradictory means and ends. So the means of libertarian socialism are the means of building power from the bottom up. It's about creating horizontal power structures. But the means of authoritarian leftists are about creating authoritarian or hierarchical power structures. Well, those are mutually exclusive. You can't have both. Okay, this is like having a +1 and a -1. These are just cancel out. These oppose one another. So you can't have left unity with somebody who just literally wants the opposite from you. Okay, like they are directly contrary means and ends, might I add. Authoritarian leftists don't even really appear in many occasions to want communism. They don't want a stateless, classless, moneyless society much of the time. And so at that point, you really have to start asking yourself, well, how do you create something with those people that has any teeth when what they want is to undermine the power of the alternative power structure? The answer is you can't. But with people who are not deeply inculcated into an ideology, the average person is not deeply inculcated into any kind of ideology. They just want to live, okay? You talk to the average person that has a bunch of stupid ideas, those people are far more capable of helping along the lines of libertarian socialism or in building power from the bottom up than authoritarian leftists. Authoritarian leftists are going to actively try to destroy your horizontal power structure. I've seen this so many times. Every time that a coalition is built between libertarian socialists and authoritarian leftists try to co-opt it and then destroy all horizontal power within it. And that's because authoritarian power, hierarchical power structures cannot tolerate horizontal power. Hierarchical power is about the dissolution of the power of the people. It's about the dissolution of the total power of the group and the concentration of that power in the hands of a very small group of people. So then you can't work with those people, but you can work with somebody who has an incoherent ideology. Because the person with an incoherent ideology might be brought in many different directions. And that's the majority of people. Authoritarian leftists are a very small sect that has large influence through their attempt to undermine and destroy other coalitions within the movement. Whereas libertarian socialists really are just trying to build the opposing horizontal power structure that will act as an alternative hegemony to the prevailing structure. So that's why there can't be left unity. I wish it were otherwise, but we already tried it. So we have to learn from the lessons of the past. That's what platformism is. Platformism learned from the failures of trying to create a unified front with authoritarian leftists. And I am even further down the path. I'm an specificist. So I take platformism as my base requisite, and I'm an specificist in the development of platformism. Yeah, as Melkor says, my local ML orgs will literally work with the ACP and try to squash anarchist organizing or representation at any labor organizing. Exactly. Yeah. It's like authoritarian leftists cannot tolerate there being any diversity in the movement. They are an active impediment to the development of horizontal power. It's just precisely opposed to one another. Haas says, Daniel, an anarchist could also come... co-opt an authoritarian leftist organization. Theoretically, but not practically, this pretty much never happens. And that's because hierarchical power structures perpetuate themselves as hierarchical power structures, and horizontal power structures perpetuate themselves as horizontal power structures. So, yeah, I mean, you could. That sometimes works, but entryism is more like spy work than it is like any form of coordination. So what you're talking about right now is an active form of parallel warfare. That's not solidarity. Rory Bam Bam says, when I try and organize my mutual aid group, everyone is just waiting for a manager to organize everything and tell everyone what to do. And it can be tiring. Have you run into this? Any tips? Yes. What you want to do is you want to create a task list. Okay. You want to start breaking everything down into discrete tasks and then hand out the tasks. And what you'll find is the more that you begin to just hand out tasks, people will begin to slot themselves into the tasks. But when it's not clear to everybody what needs to be done, they're going to rely on expertise. So in order for you to disseminate expertise, you need to make the tasks that need to be done legible. If the tasks aren't legible, they will default to expertise. So I will probably be jumping off here in probably about 10 minutes. Did I get your message about council communism? I did not see that. I heard that council can be a middle ground. I heard that council communism can be a middle ground between ML and anarchism. I do not agree. Council communism might as well just be anarchism. Council communism is firmly in the territory of anarchism. If you were to have to figure out which one it's closer to anarchism. In fact, most anarchists who are like very well-read anarchists will tell you that council communism is basically just anarcho-syndicalism. And that's what a very well-read council communists will conclude as well. But if you're very well read in all of those things, in council communism, anarchism, and Marxist-Leninism, you will never conclude that council communism is closer to Marxist-Leninism than it is to anarchism, or even just halfway through. Unruly says, have you read The Irrational in Politics by Maurice Brinton? I found it enlightening. I've not. However, Maurice Brinton's The Bolsheviks and Workers' Control was a very transformative book for me. So I'm definitely open to that. I'm going to bring it up here while I'm on stream so that I don't forget. There we go. Eldritch Dwarf, I'm sorry. You said, what sort of things would you recommend to someone with little organizing experience to get fellow members of a group to start communicating again? Oh, you're right. Sorry. I saw that and I processed it, but I didn't answer. That's the kind of question that is really hard to answer because I don't know, what led to the break to begin with. This is something I've thought a lot about is like people ask me organizing questions, and when people ask me the organizing question, my mind just gets flooded with all of the contingencies that could have led to the problem to begin with. Like, I don't know why people aren't talking with each other. Is it like, is it because there was a fallout? There's a big argument. Is it because people got burnt out? Is it because the project dead ended? Is it because, you know, they don't have a similar commitment? Like, I'd have to have so many details to be able to give you a specific answer to that question because everything is so conditional. You know what I'm saying? But what I would say is, given that I just said that, the answer relies upon why that it happened. You know, if the reason it happened is just everybody got kind of aimless, well, I would recommend trying to remind everybody why that you were originally organizing together and trying to kind of hype them up again. right? And trying to give them a direction. If the reason is because they got into a big dispute, that can be really hard to mediate. And what I want to say is, like, it's no insult to you if you can't get that done, because people who have had big disputes, that often causes fractures that are very difficult to repair. If the reason is because you had a big loss, that can also be very difficult to come back from. But I would say it's very similar to that first one, where you're really trying to bring their minds back to, why are we doing this originally? What is the real reason that brought us together? What are our connections? Try to find maybe some like social space to get everybody back together. So like, offer, hey, we should all go out and get a drink this Tuesday. Don't say sometime soon. Like be really specific about when it would be, and like try to get everybody back together in like some really finite timeline, and, maybe even accompany it with some statement of purpose that accords to the reason why y'all were originally trying to organize together. Like, the job of an organizer to such a large degree is to inspire people to action. And that means that you need to always be trying to figure out how to impassion people towards your ends. And so, like, that's a big part of it. You're a motivator. It's hard, but you've got to learn to be a motivator as well. It's certainly not something that is done casually. It's something done very deliberately. So ask yourself how you can kind of get everybody back into the fold and remind people why they were organizing to begin with. Arachno Anarchy says, how would you go about getting my local anarchist scene more organized and formalized when most anarchists here get anxious at any kind of formality? Find the people who aren't anxious about formality and begin creating that organization. Don't wait around for everybody to be on board before you do the thing. Find the people that are already on board and begin building. You only need one other person to do the thing. Okay. You don't imagine to yourself you need the whole scene. You don't. Just get one other person and then do the thing, and then try to get a third person and continue doing the thing, and then try to get a fourth person and continue doing the thing. You don't have to do it all at once. Just do it gradually, step by step. What do they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you complete the journey? One step at a time. Like, don't get ahead of yourself. Just do it one step at a time. Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged, because it all takes place gradually. I want you to think about the fact that before the Spanish Civil War, there was like 70 years of organizing we don't talk about. Okay, that shit didn't just happen in a day. It took a long time and a lot of effort to get that done. So think with a long-term vision. That's what I want to advocate. So where am I at? Club 72 Vivo says, when organizing with non-anarchists, which every mass organization must encompass, how do we create social structures which prefigure the abolition of monogamy without enforcing relationship anarchism? I do not think that is something that you should try to emphasize in your organization. I think that you should only try to emphasize that in individual relationships. And I do also think that different people have different desires and needs, and that we should not be trying to enforce those people, enforce our conceptions of what a relationship looks like on those people. In order for a person who is primarily monogamous to be in a polyamorous relationship, it requires a lot of growth. Okay, it requires a lot of personal growth that a lot of people have not even started yet. They've not even begun. So there shouldn't be any expectation that you're going to get them to just like be polyamorous. And it's also possible that certain people will just never be fit for that, and that they just don't have the kind of psyche that will make them fit for a polyamorous relationship. So what I would say is that should not be a baseline of any organization. Jokey Pie says, what should I do if I have burnout problems related to mental illness? I would recommend being very honest about your capacity to yourself and not taking on more than you think you can take on. You know, a lot of people with mental illness, or really just kind of any neurodivergence, you know, they have peaks and troughs. You know, their mental health goes like that. What I would recommend is take on what you think you could handle at the bottom. Don't take on what you think you can handle at the top, because what's going to happen is that you're going to take on what you think you can handle at the top and you're going to drop the ball. Don't. That's dangerous for you and everybody else. Instead, imagine, at my worst, what could I handle? And then take on that, because that is what you'll be able to handle in all circumstances. That's my impression. Melkor says, the first Spanish anarchists were like 30 guys who listened to a Bakunin lecture and then eventually turned into the CNT FAI 3 million strong. Yes. Yes. That, everyone, that is exactly right. That's how all this shit starts. That's how all this shit starts. That's why formal organization is so important, because you know what? Those 30 guys, I bet you not all 30 of those guys were there by the time it was 3 million strong. Okay. And by the point it was 3 million strong, you know, those 30 guys weren't the ones at the steering wheel. It was a lot of different people. You have to create structures that can weather growth and perpetuation. It's so much harder than building something that is only going to work, you know, for 3 people. You got to build something with 3 people that has the concepts in mind of how it is going to scale and perpetuate and grow. And just imagine and just understand that what you create that may be small right now will not remain small forever if you do your job right. It will become bigger and will get more advocates over time. Professor Yale says, can someone help me break my demoralization? I'm disabled and have very limited skills building. I feel like I'd be a dead weight on any org I get into. I just want to tell you, absolutely would not. You absolutely would not be a dead weight. Because, like, here's the thing. Let's imagine you join the org and you don't have a lot to provide. You're just another person on the docket. Like, what is it? You're not a weight, but what you do need to do is develop those skills in the practice of the organization. Come into it and be open-minded about being able to develop skills. Don't come into it being like, well, I just suck and can't do anything. If that's what you come into it with, you're never going to develop skills. You have to develop skills. You have to start with the understanding you're like, yeah, I'm bad at it now, but I could get better. You have to have confidence in your ability to learn the thing to begin with. And when you enter the organization, you need to be like open about the fact you're like, I don't know what I offer, but I want to be able to offer things. So you need to be open to learning. You need to practice modesty in approaching the things, but you also need to be committed to actually learning to whatever it is they're trying to teach you. And you need to understand that to learn anything is about commitment. It is about sticking to it even when it's hard. And with that mindset, you'll be useful to any organization that you come into. I just want to note that, because it's so much about learning and sticking to it. It's so much less about coming into it with all the knowledge. I just want you to understand that coming into it with all the skills already, not necessary. What's necessary is the willingness to learn the skills when you come into the organization. E. Prieto says, what can I do to encourage hope when encountering the looming environmental breaking points? Yeah, as Melkor says, I have a video called Hope. I think that a lot of these mental, a lot of what's in that video is just good mental hygiene. It's almost like psychological, it's almost therapy in a sense to get you to understand what hope actually is. Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is based on the realistic understanding that things only change by developing an expectation of the possibility and then pioneering forward towards the goal without any expectation that you will succeed, but recognizing that if there is any way you will succeed, it will only be under the circumstance that you endeavor with the possibility in mind. right? Like if you, the example I give in the video is this idea of like archers trying to hit a target that is very, very far away through a windy valley. Okay. And we know that it is possible to hit the target, but it is so, so hard. It's like 1 out of, some very, very small possibility. It's like 1 out of 100,000, 1 out of 1,000,000 or something arrows by a master will ever land. Okay. Well, here's the thing. If when we go into trying to fire the arrows towards the target, we don't know what the possibility is. We don't know if it's easy or hard or whatever. But if you are a cynic and you go in and you say, and it's easy to be defeated and you have a defeatist attitude, well, you'll never even get good enough where you get the 1 out of 1,000,000 chance. For you, it's impossible because you've come into it with the expectation you can't hit the target. And so you're kind of useless. You're basically never going to achieve anything because you've come into it with like, well, it's not even possible. So you'll never endeavor to make it possible. The person who comes into it saying, no, I don't know if it's possible, but I do know if it's possible. It will only take place under the conditions that I have become a master, that I have cultivated myself to become capable of doing it. Only that person will ever be able to fire the 1,000,000 arrows such that one of them will land upon the target. That is revolution in a nutshell, in my opinion. That is what revolutionary conception is. It's not about believing, I will hit the target. It is about understanding if the target will ever be hit. I have to enter into the circumstance with an understanding that it will only be hit through my sheer perseverance, through the development of my own mastery, my own capabilities. And only then will I perhaps even be able to hit the possible outcomes. Because what we've seen is it is not a bygone conclusion, that is very, very challenging to achieve the revolutionary goals. In history, we perhaps can only look to like the CNT-FAI in revolutionary Spain and the Free Territories of Ukraine and the Zapatistas and a brief time in Rojava. And what this means is that this is a very, very, very challenging goal. This is an extremely challenging goal. So you have to enter into it with an expectation that you and others must achieve an extraordinary mastery to and possibly have the ability to achieve the end. And that what that means is that you are going to have to work long and hard without the direct reassurance that it's possible and without the direct reassurance that you are capable. And instead, you're going to have to endeavor forward through many different travails on a long path that is very, very treacherous, because that is what is necessary. And you have to commit yourself to revolutionary goals because they are necessary. Not because they are just desirable, but because the alternative is the destruction of the planet and the misery of billions of people. So that's my perspective. I Am Cheese gave $2 and they said, what's your favorite anarchist song from history? Probably Mother Anarchy Loves Her Sons. I think that's what it's called, right? Yeah, Mother Anarchy Loves Her Sons. It's a banger. Oh, it won't play for some reason. Not sure why. Yeah. Fire W says, hey, Anarch, new viewer here. How's the day going? It's going pretty good so far. I'm in a good mood. Yeah, Unruly says, I'm partial to A Las Barricadas, the CNT theme anthem. Yeah, that one's pretty fucking sweet. Good stuff. Melkor says, read The Heroic Years by Murray Bookchin. Agreed. Absolutely. The CNTFAI, I think, remains the most inspiring example of revolutionary progress in human history. So here in just a few minutes, I am about to jump off here. So I am about to call it to a close. I just want to remind everybody, go watch the newest video that just released. Looks like it's not doing so well. Yep, still bombing. You see, that's revolutionary hope right there. I'm just hoping to myself that there's some possibility that things will work out with this video. Will it? Probably not. Here you go though. Here's the video. Please go watch it. Fire W says, what was your journey to your current political opinions? I actually have a video about that. You should go look back through my backlog. I don't remember what it's called. Something like Why I'm an Anarchist or something like that. Unruly says, have any of you seen the documentary about the CNTFAI that Zoe Baker hosts on her channel? Yeah, that one is freaking great. Everybody should watch that for sure. No doubt. Asakari Lone Wolf says, the new video is great. You covered a lot in such a short time. I'm super glad to hear that. I'm proud of it. I think that's a super cool video. Maybe it's just the thumbnail. I don't know. The thumbnail is pretty crappy. Maybe I should try to create a new one. Anyway, so yeah, last thing I want to say, if you want to help me continue doing everything on the channel here, if you want to help me continue doing this important work, and you don't want me to have to create just a bunch of stream clips rather than letting me create like actual revolutionary material and teaching people how to organize and teaching people theory, then please go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount. There's a bunch of different tiers. Go over to Means TV and become a subscriber to Means TV. Use my discount code, which is just ANARK, ANARK, and you'll get a discount. And that gives me a little bit of cut of that. Become a member on YouTube. You can become a member right here on YouTube. This is a great way as well to fund me. I appreciate everybody who gave money today. Today has been really fantastic. I appreciate all of you. But yeah, no, I think that's about it, everybody. I think I'm gonna call it to a close there. Yeah, go over to the Patreon, become a patron. Oh yeah, pre-order a copy of A Modern Anarchism. My first book is going to be released on October 27th. I published through Seditionist beforehand, but Seditionist is a pretty small press, so it didn't get a lot of distribution. This will be the first time that one of my works has gotten large-scale distribution, and I'm really excited about it. So go over and pre-order A Modern Anarchism and show PM Press that this was like a good investment on their part and that they did the right thing funding the book. Also, the number of books that I sell here determines what press that I can publish at next. So if they see that I've sold thousands or tens of thousands of copies of this book, that then allows me to go to an even bigger press afterwards. So, please, purchase or pre-order copies of A Modern Anarchism from PM Press. And yeah, I think that is about it for the stream today, everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Just want to remind you, I do these every other week now. So I will also be doing them doing another one on the 26th. I will see y'all then, and